Yeah. So basically what happened is I backed off VOLTHA for a while, did some other stuff in the company, but I was coming back to VOLTHA, ramping up again. And part of that ramp up, I wanted to deploy VOLTHA, which made sense. And I knew there was SIEM in a box, and I knew SIEM in a box was a one system deployment, which you could use to kind of get familiar with the capability. What I wanted to do, though, was build an environment that, at least in my mind, was more similar to what I thought a full-fledged, more complex deployment might be. And that deployment would then also provide a little more network isolation, if you will, for different components of the VOLTHA capability. It would also provide a multi-node Kubernetes environment so that you could actually do some testing in terms of hardware failure. I also knew I didn't want to do just containers in terms of the environment, and I wanted to use real hardware. Again, give some different isolation characteristics to the demo. So Karthik and I, a guy that I work with, started putting this together. And at its base, it is a multi-node Kubernetes deployment. It's got 3 compute nodes, compute 1, 2, and 3. And it's got 1 Kubernetes master node. And then on top of that, I created a leaf-spine fabric, as you can see, using Mininet, linked in via tunnels these compute nodes. So you have essentially these VMs connected into the leaf-spine fabric. And then I added a couple different other compute nodes into the equation. One, they're not part of the Kubernetes fabric, but they represent hardware, if you will, in a physical deployment. One would be an OLT. So the OLT here in this environment is a VM running the standard OnSIM v2 and the tester, or the RG for the RG, as well as I created another what I call the back office VM, and on that I am running Radius as well as a DHCP server. So, and then the question was, let's deploy all the VOLTHA charts on it. I focused on VOLTHA, not on SIBA, so I used the Helm charts to deploy on top of the Kubernetes environment. And then let's see if we can get EA poll and DHCP working. At least get started and see what I find is really that, and give kind of that extra environment that people could use if they chose, ignore if they want, but just to give some different testing capabilities. There are some differences here. For example, I create the leaf-spine fabric and run Kubernetes over the leaf-spine fabric. So the data network, if you will, the data plane network. So I'm not running Kubernetes, I believe even the box runs Kubernetes on the management network, where I'm running it on the data network. So there are some differences there too. My thought there was you really want to keep that leaf-spine fabric as your underlay essentially stable and probably out of the pod itself, and then run everything in the pod on top of that fabric. And again, there's some design choices there, and people can do it differently as well. EA poll came up relatively easy, and I've already got it authenticated here, but I'll do a DHCP later. EA poll came up relatively easy. DHCP has been an interesting journey as I've gone back and forth with Andy and others, trying to understand what's really happening and why, for a long time, Steve in the box was working and my environment wasn't. And there's some interesting tagging going on behind the scenes, including DHCP relays double tagging 1Q, 1Q, not 1AD, 1Q, which is weird. And then it expects DHCP response to come back untagged into the DHCP relay, which it then tags 1AD, 1Q before it passes back down to VOLTHA. So it's still coming a little clear, some of this tagging stuff, as Andy and I work through some of this, but it's, at least from my perspective, it's pulled out some interesting things that I've looked at and thought, wow, if what I'm seeing is correct and what Andy and I are kind of seeing is correct, need to dig into some of this a little bit more, to be honest. And so, again, the environment in terms of value has provided, I think, at least to me, a way to do kind of a real fledged Kubernetes up down, bring down hardware, but also pulled out some other details that I thought were kind of strange and might deserve some further investigation. And not as expected. I think that's a fine way to put it. And not as I would, yeah, not as expected. I'll leave it at that, as opposed to really screwy.
Well, you put that on the table.
Yeah. I have that problem. Anyway, so you can see there's a DHCP for my RG, and it goes all the way back up to across the leaf spine fabric, up to the back office through ONOS and back. So right now, EA pull and DHCP is working. I need to commit those changes in that I just made. This is a public project. It's on GitHub. So you can go in there and follow the README and create it yourself. It's not a one button environment like Sieve in the Box is today. It could be, just that again hasn't been the main priority right now. But again, it's out there for the community. If they choose to use it, great. If not, whatever. If it doesn't work for you guys or it doesn't provide value, that's fine too. If people have comments, questions, or what was I thinking in terms of if they choose to look at it, all that contributions are absolutely more than welcome. As it was put on the mailing list, that this is not meant to be a replacement for Sieve in the Box. I see it as completely an environment that provides a different capability. And I'm not trying to say, hey, use this, not Sieve in the Box. Use Sieve in the Box for what Sieve in the Box is really good for, right? It's really good to bring up some full Sieve capability. I focused on VOLTHA right now and focused on multi-node capability. You could deploy Sieve on top of this, without or XOS and NEM on top of this, and come up with this full Sieve environment if you want. Has been my focus. So I just want to make it very clear. It's not, this is not supposed to be a competitor replacement. It's supposed to be complementary and be able to test different things. And there you go. Questions?
Any question for?
What kind of resources do you need for this?
So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 VMs, 7 VMs. Most of the VMs, I think I've allocated 4 to 6 gig of memory, 2 CPUs, kind of the standard. One guy I'm working with is trying to bring that down to see if he can run it on his MacBook. But it's not light on resources. So I run it on a big, Linux box in the background.
Any other questions? So, David, I think maybe some of the documentation stuff you want to put it in introduction.
No, I haven't. I'm sorry. There's a question. No, I'm not running. I'm running this. VOLTHA 1.6. So I'm using the Helm charts to deploy. I've got to get it to go to 2.0 so that we can do more clustered environments and actually do some scale up, scale tests.
But this one you have, for instance, each of VOLTHA core.
No, right, because the Helm charts only just deploy one. I need to do that.
And our next talk is BBSim. So is that something the BBSim can be part of this thing?
Again, it's on GitHub, so anybody can contribute anything they want, and we can add it. So I don't think there's an advantage to it. Okay, that's fine. Yep. Okay, that's it.
I think an interesting experiment is to have this system cluster environment without the defined fabric as elimination.
Yeah, no, and I agree. That is kind of the current deployments don't use the leaf-spine fabric. It'd be interesting to, my perspective, comments from the carriers and people that are going to deploy this in the field. You know, do they see running Kubernetes over the leaf-spine, or do they see running it over the management network as something more similar to their physical deployments?
Any other comments? Okay, so Kira-san, you ready for the?
I'm going to interject one thing from yesterday. Had an action item. AT&T does not need the HCP v6 enhancement because we don't use it. And in fact, in our current network with a routed COs, which has been now we are now fully routed CO in our network, we actually don't need the enhancement on IPv4 either. So we need the EA poll 801.21x. We need that stuff. We need the enrichment from EA poll, but from IPv4 and IPv6, we don't actually need enhancement on either one. So they could simply pass through. We don't use option 82 anymore now that we're routed CO.
Okay, so next quick demo will be the BBSim again. So the Kata can do it.
Do you hear me? Okay, nice. So let me talk about the BBSim update and roadmap, including demonstration. So first of all, let me talk about the concept of BBSim. So BBSim is a software emulator to enable the scalability test of VOLTHA and on-off without hardware equipment. So the purpose of this emulator is emulating the control plane only. So including indications from OLT devices and OMCI messages from ONUs and EPOL messages and DHCP messages. So I want to talk about the update in architecture of BBSim in this couple of months. Before this January, so BBSim used to use actual DHCP clients and WPS applicants to emulate the EPOL messages and DHCP messages for DHCP relay tests and AAA application tests running on Nanos. However, after this January, I omitted that kind of clients and developed the responder that runs inside BBSim. So this responder enables the BBSim to emulate the, to emulate a lot of ONU and residential gateway stably. So let me show you the, demonstration using BBSim. So I hope you can see the screen of VOLTHA CLI. So you can find that BBSim successfully emulates the OpenOLT device and block BRCM OpenOMCI ONU successfully. So you can see all ONU devices and OLT device becomes enabled and active and reachable. And also you can see in on-off GUI, so 64 ONUs are authenticated, and the IP address are successfully assigned to each residential gateway that were emulated in BBSim. And also you can find in CLI screen, all ONUs are, are assigned IP address and authenticated. However, we are now facing on the problem in AAA application. So we call this problem as unauthorized problem. So you can find some of residential gateways still remain unauthorized, despite most of ONUs are authorized successfully. So I and ONS members are now trying to find and get bottom of why this problem happened. So as far as I can, see in the log of VOLTHA, some packets dropped inside the VOLTHA core or RF agent. So anyway, I'm now trying to solve that problem. So, BBSim features, current BBSim features is as follows. So BBSim supports VOLTHA 1.6, and we are now trying to catch up with VOLTHA 1.x master. And BBSim has a scalability for emulating a lot of ONUs, over 64 ONUs, and EPROM messages and DHCP message. But, like I said, we found pending and unauthorized problem happened in AAA test when we emulated over 64 ONUs. The BBSim roadmap is as follows. So I'm glad if you have some comments or requests on this roadmap for adding some features on BBSim. We are now trying to add a REST API or gRPC API in order to enable or disable each device emulated in BBSim, and or deleting or rebooting those devices. And more, we are now thinking to add the features like alarm support or data plane support via BBSim by adding NNI ports in for emulating D plane of PON network. That's all I can make a presentation here. Do you have any comments or questions about BBSim architecture or a demonstration I did here? The BBSim can emulate only one OD device. However, you can spawn the container of BBSim. So if you do that, you can emulate a lot of ONUs. Do you see what I mean? Sorry.
So is the BBSim only one pump port, or can be one BBSim can have a 16? Huh?
Yes,
Okay.
right. Yes.
Okay,
It's
but right
about
now the demo
multiple
just one,
interfaces.
right?
Yes.
Okay. And then there's the success rate. You said the AAA and DHCP combined is 0 out of 5. The 0% success.
Yes, right. So unfortunately, so I'm trying to conduct both of emulations by 64 ONUs, but among 5 trials, I cannot find a successful case.
Okay.
So according to Shadow, even so only when we try to conduct only AAA emulation, it succeeded 80%. However, when we try to emulate both of cases, it didn't succeed.
Everything in one attack, everything's together, right? The adapter and everything's together.
Just supporting the go.
but between OS agent and core, it's just job is just training. The message it meets core,
So, yeah,
but you should not lose the message.
That's what my
The application I thought has a count. But there's a, again, there's a byte counter.
to invest more time.
To look, but if the root cause of it, have to go to Golang again for web agent.
So if I have one ONU, does DHCP succeed?
Yes, sure.
Okay.
So we can successfully emulate and conduct tests even when we emulate only 16 ONUs. So it is stable in 16 ONUs. However, when I try to increase the number of ONUs, it sometimes fails.
Okay, I think maybe some further discussion, we can do it offline a little bit. Thanks, Keita-san. So, how many of you were in the first VOLTHA face-to-face meeting? I think May 2017? Yeah, 2017 in Broadcom. How many of you are in AT&T, the second face-to-face meeting at AT&T in Panama? Cool. And David, I think you were there too.
I don't know.
He was there all the time.
How many of you are on the last year? Last year in Dallas.
Okay. Yeah.
Now we have all these
I remember.
So, welcome. I mean, our business right? Oh yeah. Okay. So I think the VOLTHA we started as its own project. I think May 2017, and then so we almost approaching 2-year period. And I was sort of the de facto product owner for this 2-year period. But so we have 4 meetings, and then we have VOLTA release. I think that time is 1.1 and 1.2, 1.3, and now 1.6, 1.7, and we're approaching 2.0 coming up. So it's I think for this year, I think we are in a very, very critical path for the I think the BT has an aggressive schedule. Turk Telecom also has a schedule coming up, and AT&T, of course, will keep marching over to our scale deployment, and that NTT is doing something also. And I believe that Telefonica and some other unknown service provider all have been working on this in the background. So because of the critical path, I think the VOLTA project, we do need additional help. So I would like to, and DT with the A40, Access 4.0 project, they are going to put in a lot more resources into this community to speed up a lot of development portion. And then it doesn't mean you guys are off the hook. It's just we're going to get more help. So I would like to invite DT Bjorn Nagel as our co-product owner for the VOLTA project. So you want to? Yeah. Thank you, Bjorn.
Thank you, Sean. Yeah, for everyone who doesn't know me, my name is Bjorn Nagel. I'm with BT, and yeah, my background is in legacy PON systems since around 10 years. I'm working in all these FTTB, FTTH related activities of BT since the beginning. And yeah, as Sean mentioned, that year is a critical one for us. We have an internal project. It's called Access 4.0, where we incorporate these SDN approaches and where we have this disaggregation of the access node activities, and we consider VOLTA as one of the major components of that. And therefore, we decided internally to bring more resources here. So we don't want to change things. We want to accelerate things. So that's the important thing. Additional to the more resources, we also stepped up to bring more more activity or to get the help to Sean. To have these running in a way that it helps in the operator internal projects on BT, on AT&T, on Turk Telecom, and who else is interested. Yeah, that's me. I don't want to block anything else here from making progress. So if you have any questions, feel free to do it right now or come to me later on.
Welcome, Bjorn. Actually, he's not a stranger for the VOLTA community, right? So and
about 8. From they are not
they stay over. So all of us. Do you want by us too? That's right. He knows how to act. Don't record it. But well, thank you so much. But they always very engaged with them. So I think it's a good. Well, but anyway, so thank you so much. Okay. So the next segment, again, I want to congratulate everyone in the room here. As I said, a lot of new faces. So hopefully we can continue to grow. Again, as I said, if you look at the to-do list and then what Julie is going to present pretty soon about the release planning, there's a lot of work need to do. Some of the work maybe you're not familiar with, but if you feel interest on that, jump on it. So and then I think ONF, this time we have 5 attendants from ONF. I think it means how important this project to the ONF project as a whole. So I congratulate each one of you for being here, and then has been so just do your work and contribute, and then sharing the experience. I think that's I think this community, I think as far as I know, is probably the most common and shared open source community as far as I know. Okay, of course I only know this one. So Julie, you take the floor, I guess. Oh.
All right, so for the next little bit of time here, what we'll be working on is trying to nail down the scope for 2.1 and also a little bit of look at some future items as well. And also you'll notice we have a TBD on the date. We don't have a planned date yet associated with 2.1. Part of that has been in flux because of the shift in the schedule for 2.0. So at the end of today, I'd like to make sure we have a plan going forward for when we think when we will kind of put that marker for 2.0, and then what we want for the assigned scope for 2.1. And then also we'll be looking for the technical leads for any of the agreed scope items and trying to build up the development teams that will be planning to contribute to each of those scope items as well. So there's a slide that will be a little easier to read. I just wanted to put this one up here first. It's our rough roadmap. And once we finalize things out of this meeting, then this version of the planning deck will replace the one that's currently linked on the wiki. Okay, so this is just a draft for a starting point for the discussion today. It's looked at with kind of what we'd initially planned to include in the next phase of the development, and also some areas that carried over from 2.0, got pushed out a little bit, got moved into 2.1. So we need to go down the list and decide which of these items are going to remain here, if there are items that are missing. And I think from some of the discussion over the last few days, we have next steps identified for some of the scope areas, and so we can map those in as appropriate as well. So I'm looking for feedback, and we'll go ahead and start. So the first one is probably going to be related to what I mentioned with where we're going to have the cutoff for 2.0. So we had, go back to this slide for 1 second. We talked about having a viable version of containerized adapters as part of 2.0, and right now it looks like that probably is the Python versions are going to be, are nearing the point where they're ready to be used for that. And then we have the Golang-based OLT adapter that is a little bit further down the schedule. So Sean, I think you had indicated, Sean Missette, I think you'd said that end of May is the estimated completion date for that work.
Yeah, so May 30 is the estimated date.
Okay.
For that.
And so kind of my first discussion topic I'd like to get cleared up so I have a good view of what we're doing is how we want to have that dividing line really. So at this point, we have May 3rd, I believe, at the very beginning of May is the target for 2.0. So we'd added sprint 16 and 17, which brings us to that first week in May. And then a few weeks later is when we expect that the Golang-based version of the OLT adapter will be ready. So do we have any guidance or views from the group?
Go to presentation mode.
Oh, yes, sorry. Hold on.
So that, yeah, they should be able to do that, right?
I'm thinking it may be worthwhile for the Golang version of OpenOLT, given it's already taken on some of the tech profile integrations anyway, just for that to be the threshold. The Python one will be the parity to 1.6 non-traffic or non-tech profile. Whether we call that one the 2.0 one or not, I guess we can decide, but there's a good dividing line there. And then any merging of tech profile really wouldn't happen in the Python at all. It would really just be in the Golang version, would just see the tech profile changes. The current ones as they are, and including the ones needed for VLAN priority matching as well.
Yeah, I mean, the tech profile work is being done in the master branch for the Python area, so.
In the 1.x branch, yeah. So the question is so now, do we take the Python 1.x tech profile changes and move them to the Python OpenOLT 2.x, or do we take really the Python 1.x tech profile and just go ahead and write it in the Golang OpenOLT and not even bother putting it in 2.x Python? It's really just a question: is it worth trying to move it to both, or just go ahead and just have the tech profile OpenOLT be the Golang OpenOLT?
Well, I think 2.0 originally was the rewrite of the core in Go, right? So that we'd like to get the Go version of the VOLTHA core.
Yeah. So I mean, that much of it, I think. So that much is there.
Is the current plan to abandon the Python
OpenOLT? Ultimately, yes.
Together as soon as Go becomes viable.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
That should be your answer. Right?
Yeah. So I guess it's just the decision. It sounds like is for the, again, out loud, Python OpenOLT 2.0, taking those changes will not see the tech profile changes, right? Any tech profile changes in 2. anything will be in the Golang tech profile, Golang OpenOLT.
Right. So right now, how I had that placed was the tech profile work was in 2.1, and the Go version of the OpenOLT adapter was in 2.1 as well. And so 2.0 is going to be that cutoff for the Python-based containers, and then no incorporation of tech profiles till 2.1. So
that makes sense. I mean, I think we're saying the same thing.
Okay. So I think
I'm trying to read Sean's face, and I'm not sure if we're saying the same thing.
There was some confusion about what 2.0 was going to be, right? So
right.
So 2.0 was going to be the new core, or the new.
Yeah.
But it sounds like the definition of that is maybe changing a bit.
It's 2.1 in my mind.
And
2.1 would be the new core.
You were out of the office for a little bit, perhaps when we had some of those discussions as well. I think, yeah, it rings a little bell now. So yeah.
So I don't think we got clarity.
Yeah.
Tech profiles is not going into Python.
No.
Correct?
Correct.
Right?
Okay.
Right.
So we're not going to have an official release with tech profiles in the Python base.
We're not going to do the work.
In the 2.x version of Python. So the 1.7, so 1.7, the all combined Python everything will have the tech profile in it, right? So the VOLTHA 1.7 will have the work that's been done, and the all combined everything, Python everything, right? That one's set. And it's sounding like the 2.0 version is, right, the introduction of the Go core, the introduction of the containerized adapters as they were for 1.6, right? The Python ONU, Python OpenOLT. And then 2.1 will be the introduction of tech profile in the 2.anything series. But it sounds like.
Okay, so the use of, the purpose of 2.0 is what? Is that's for integration testing of the new core and the Python adapter? Okay.
So if we do that, then I think that does give us at least a clean break for the Python-based work. And then we'll need to look at timeline then for 2.1, since that's when we'll have the Go-based version of the OLT adapter, and figure out what makes sense for a target release date for that. And that may play into where we want to shuffle some scope items around and how frequently we want to have these functional releases, these dot releases.
It sounds like the Golang version of the OpenOLT adapter is, I don't know, a couple of 3 weeks after the 2.0 release, right? Is it
Right.
worthwhile waiting, or is that
Well, that was
too
part of,
unstable a change?
right, that was part of what I'd wanted to tee up with the discussion is, does it make sense for us to stick with that original date for 2.0 and have that as a cutoff for the Python-based adapters? And then that does drive some discussions about the timing for 2.1, because we do want to make sure that we get the tech profile work and the Go-based OLT adapter work into a release as soon as possible as well, I think.
And I kind of figured if you know, the Golang version is being written from scratch anyway, it would be easier to go ahead and incorporate the tech profile at that point, because you're already having to construct it all anyway. It might just be easier just to go ahead and
Yeah,
have that in there.
that's being done, yeah.
Yeah, and it's already being done anyway, so it's like, I think it's going to happen by default regardless.
Yeah, so
Anyway.
the additional work is that now we need to incorporate the changes into the core that have been made in the Python version.
Yeah. So really the only additional work then for 2.1 other than that is the tech profile needed in the core, the new 2.0 core, and OF agent, and then any ONU changes for the 2.x Python ONU. That makes sense.
Yeah, so I mean, is there any urgent demand for a 2.0 that doesn't have tech profiles, but it does have the core changes?
I'll leave that for product owners and operators and actually everyone else in the community to make a comment on that.
I almost feel like we should just release it to get past it. Like we keep talking about it. Let's just call it done and move on.
I think the original idea is a version of the OOT adapter plus the Python-based ONU adapter, so we can plumb those into the VOLTHA core, so some of the testing can be done. So that's why the 2.0.
So functionally, comparing 1.7 to 2.0, functionally 1.7 will be more feature capable because it will have tech profile, whereas 2.0, the separated version won't, but it will have the diversified core, the diversified adapters. With 2.1, the expectation is feature-wise 1.7 will then match. And then at that point, 1.7 is really just legacy and use it as it is. And everyone seem like that's reasonable?
I think that's what Sarah wrote on the whiteboard, right? So 2.0 is parallel to 1.6 with a Python adapter. 1 is parallel to 1.7.
Yes. Yes.
Some of the messaging issues.
I mean, I would expect anything fundamental to messaging within 1.7, like if it takes an architectural change to make 1.7 perform better, probably not. Well, or small scale deployments. You know, if like was demonstrated, anything up to 60 ONUs, probably okay. Anything higher, you're probably risking something. Anything more than 60 ONUs, you really have to look for the 2.x series. What that looks like.
Maybe we can Kata do testing on the 32 and use do it. Do it, give it a try.
You on this?
Yeah.
I can use the Python.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
Python
So,
one.
yeah, and some of the folks doing adapter work who don't have physical hardware have been using for like one or two ONUs or one there.
Pressure.
So, and the kid, all right, start laying out the caveats now. It's been converted from Python 1. There's a lot of extra calls before, all the gotcha. So it hasn't been optimized yet for that one. But yeah, it's ready to be used.
Yeah, let's keep the microphone on unless you want to talk something bad about me. Otherwise, let's keep the mic on, okay?
But he's gonna know because it's gonna be red. That's right, I'm watching. Okay.
Let me ask a real quick question, and I don't know if it'll be covered in this, but there's a good point that you bring up just as far as the community's kind of strategy. When the service providers start to deploy releases, is the assumption that it's up to the service provider to maintain, say if somebody did deploy 1.7, didn't want to go to 2x, that the community is kind of, hey, we'll do what we can, but it's, there's no intent to increase scalability, feature, function, anything. It becomes the service provider. So where I worry is where Turk, Deutsche, us, we go into a full scale deployment and we're on different revs. I don't know that we got to solve that because we don't have that problem now, but that's a very good question of what happens to.
I mean, it's really the supporting of 1.7. At what level do we or individuals agree to support it to what level, right?
I mean, of the service providers here, does anybody plan to deploy that production environment?
Yeah, and I don't think my question wasn't necessarily 1.7.
But we have to be cognizant of that.
I mean, I expect we'll probably refresh.
Make sure we don't.
Well, the question is that a community problem or is that a system integration, service provider who deploys the problem?
As a community, I would expect that, if service provider take that 1.7 back and found the issue, make the community aware there's the issue, and then if ONAP or other people have the knowledge to try to help it out, I think that's great. And if the service provider and their partners resolve the issue, and maybe have that. But I think as a committee as well on the development portion.
So at the end of the day, the community will house the repository for all previous releases, or to a certain number of revs back.
Open, yeah. The version which is open and has a resolution.
So yeah, if you find something with 1.7 and let's say handling of a particular OMCI message fails, it's a quick fix, 1.7, easily done. And it likely will have to be merged over to 2.0, 2.1 anyway, so it's good to know. But if it's something along the lines of we tried to deploy 1,000 ONUs and it just doesn't work anymore, probably not going to be able to fix that.
That was right there in the release note.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah. So, I mean, it just depends on the issue.
Exactly what you just said about release notes. I know there's operators out there doing things with months. The question is, should we put out? I was unaware of some limitations.
Yeah, I agree.
To be fair, though, the data on the performance issues is very fresh.
Yeah.
I mean, since they've gotten BBSim to actually function that way, now we can.
Yeah. Up until BBSim existed, we really had no way other than actually wiring up 70, 80 OSUs. So
That's fair. And just honestly, I'm getting ready to wire up a big system, and I would want.
The other way to look at it, it's very hard. A lot of tests to figure out like what's the limitation of the system. But the other way to look at it is if we say whoever's going to take 2.0, what is the expectation that you one OLT and 10 ONUs, and what would be that expectation? Like, then we can make sure that when we have that release, we can meet that.
Right now, to me, the goal is to reach 65 ONUs. And there's like, at this point now, we finally have a bar and we know where it is. That's good to know. So the next steps really is run it up to 65. Are we better? If we're worse, then we go back and figure out what went wrong.
But the other thing is, if some service provider will take it in, they already customized in some way. Already off track to our main.
I'm not even at the house, should you?
Yeah, it depends on the issue.
Right. Should I? Right.
I wasn't trying to.
No.
I wasn't trying to say. Some of the operators we are going down below 1.6.
And that's also one of the reasons I think the Deutsche Telekom, the organization, can help.
Just got volunteered.
I noticed that as well.
No. They agree.
I think it's not a big issue to write down what are the limitations which are already known right now, but to have it as a comprehensive release note, you have to do a lot of testing furthermore to figure out all the limitations. I suppose a lot of limitations are unknown up to now, and that's for me the question how we want to deal it. It's the easy thing is to write down what we already know. So that's the low hanging fruit, and then we step further and you can download it, you can try it, and then you can say, okay, I figured out there's an additional limitation. Okay, we can incorporate it in the release note. That's easy. But I would like to avoid a lot of effort bringing in that releases to figure out where are the limitations. So that would consume a reasonable part of resources, which we could better use in the further releases of 2. something. Okay. For X, number 6.
But I mean, like again, including what we know, we could include the results of the test and say, per this release, 64 ONUs on these tests that have been run. You know, that's what we know.
Get a good picture of what fast learns from faster. That could become the basis of the thing that this is.
Yeah, no, that's a good idea.
I think, there's a certification brigade, right? That sort of matches what the automation testing. So if you have not been involved with that and really want to explore use cases or ideas, what do you want to do?
So it's like a controllable splitter where you can remote into the splitter and, yeah. Yeah, that's, the tests like that are the ones that with real hardware tend to show interesting results that are reality based. So yeah, it's good testing.
Or something, maybe lower, not older generation of equipment, they are not no. What they should say.
Okay. Oh, any other comments? So the good news for me at the moment is this still lines up with what we had at our last discussion on the roadmap. And so I think next let's look at 2.1 and the candidate scope items we have, and we need to go through and prioritize that list because I suspect it's got too many target scope items at this moment. And then DT, if I could have you guys help with estimating what additional work may be able to be accounted for, because I only have kind of a sense for what our current development team can do. So I'll be looking for input for the additional resourcing effort as well. Okay.
So Julie,
yes.
Sorry. So on the 2.0, the target release May 3rd. That day is the community agreement.
This was the adding 2 more sprints to 2.0, and that's where the date lined up. And so we've got one of those sprints kicked off at the beginning of this week. So we've got about 2 weeks left on that, and then 1 sprint remaining afterwards.
So I guess I think that's a good estimate.
Okay. Then let's go on to the target scope. So this is a more workable view of what was on that roadmap chart with the 3 different buckets for different releases. So this one, I think we agreed, and Sean Massette, correct me if I'm wrong also, that the Golang-based OpenOLT adapter will go in 2.1. I can remove my little note there. And at the same time, we'll be having the porting over of the 1.7 functionality for tech profiles and meter bands into the 2.x branch as well. And I need to start putting resources down as well. I've pre-populated a few items here for who I think will be working on items. So for the tech profiles and meter bands, I've got Radisys, ONF, and Netsia currently on the list. If I need to add others that want to volunteer to add to that effort, please let me know. So we'll be trying to fill in and change all the TBDs to groups of development teams as we go through the list. And if we have items with no one agreeing to pick up the work for the scopes, then we need to reassess whether that belongs in the release.
I think we may have to add lines, if they're not here, for the core itself supporting tech profile and the ONU, Python ONU as well.
Okay.
Yeah, there's work for them.
Yeah, I mean, there's work in the core, yeah. There's work in OF Agent as well, in addition to OpenOLT Go.
So the that one will be is being updated to incorporate.
Yes, yeah. Until someone comes along and volunteers to rewrite the whole thing in Go, including OpenOMCI. Yeah, it's gonna happen.
Are you involved on that?
Not yet. I mean, it's going to be a fair amount of work to port OpenOMCI to Go. It's a lot of work, and it's not something.
So right now, we just really, while Julie's typing, there's no need to have a Go version of the.
Well, I mean, need is have to define that word, right? You know, this gets into. I mean, it really depends on, you know, comparing one language to another at some level becomes more about, well, how are you using it, right? It may have more to do with how we're interacting with STD or the fact that we're using twisted versus individual thread, you know.
Again, to address OpenOMCI, the work you've been doing,
So especially given that, I see it staying in Python for the foreseeable future. Until it's so fundamentally broke. Yeah. And that would then also be after making sure that the interaction that we're doing in Python with OpenCI is as good as it can. Because I mean, it's just a lot more work.
one question is, remind me again, so the BBSim, doesn't use the OpenCI messages, but doesn't use the ONU adapter, right?
Does.
Does?
Yeah, so my understanding of BBSim is it simulates what the OpenOLT agent or driver is doing on the edge core, right? So just like today, OpenOLT agent, OpenOLT driver proxies OMCI from an ONU that happens to be plugged into it. BBSim simulates the delivery of OMCI that would have come from an ONU. Everything north, the adapters, should be none the wiser. It's BBSim delivering OMCI versus OpenOLT agent delivering OMCI should still look like the same OpenOMCI, the core to the adapter. Yeah.
Yeah, I actually started working.
So
Some of that capability.
BBSim exercises OpenOMCI, the ONU adapter, and OpenOLT. So it's probably the best tester we have today.
In the context of 2.0, are we going to exercise the Kafka into for
It'll
open for MCI?
Yes.
But if you use the BBSim,
Oh, okay.
or that early, then you no.
He's got enough problems.
So there's no if that in the web.
I don't know.
It's actually
Should do this.
so it's actually exercising the actual.
Yeah. The code doesn't care. Welcome.
Okay, Julie, back to you.
Okay, so I've copied over the list I had from 2.0 for the companies working on the Go-based OpenOLT adapter, and if it's left someone off, please correct me. So I've got ONF, EdgeCore, Radisys, HCL, CIG, and Sienna. And then Radisys is kind of leading up that work, I believe, is the tech lead. Amit's doing that.
Also, it would also help on the two items.
Okay.
The first two bullets, those are where
Okay.
Each of the two would be helping
Okay.
to program.
So I'll add DT to the Go adapter and then also to the tech profiles. Okay. Thank you.
So add us as well.
Okay.
Or with agent, you can add
Exciting part if you open it.
Okay.
By the way, if there's any empty spot, Julie will not let you.
I will lock the doors. Okay.
Probably worth capturing. I don't know if it's related to tech profiles or OLT OLU, but the creation of that Envoy container for RESTful web services, the core, right? That was the one I think we're going to fairly soon. So, okay. I don't know, in relation to these other ones, I don't know if it's as high a priority, but SIGA or NIM is going to need it. And
Do you want me to add it as a separate scope item, or?
I think it's a separate scope item.
That's all right.
It's something that, again, for comparison's sake to 1.7, it needs to be there.
Okay.
Got to be there. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's got to be there. It's, knowing what we learned recently, yes, it's, if we want to work with NIM or any other northbound API, we need.
Okay. Now, what's my scope item name here?
Let's say Envoy RESTful Web Services into VOLTHA 2.0. 2.x.
RESTful Web Services.
Yeah.
How it gets done.
Yeah, how it gets done.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And is that primarily Sienna? Or who's
Could be anybody, but
anybody? Okay. So I'm looking for volunteers.
And I also want to break the habit, right? If we put Sienna down here, doesn't mean it's just Sienna doing that, right?
Right.
It means
Agreed.
they will probably, or anybody will provide the knowledge. Not
Everyone
expertise,
is welcome to
right.
contribute their expertise to these areas. I'm just trying to look at it from a viability. Do we have resources to at least kick off and start the work, and we can add more names as people want to get onboarded to the different scope items.
Right.
Okay.
and start it and then
So Sienna to start.
Two. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Then, let's see, let me jump back up here on the Python ONU adapter for the work-related tech profiles in your event. So, Matt, I expect you'll be working on that. Are there other companies involved in that effort? And again, we can add more names later. As long as I have one to start today, I'm reasonably happy for most of this. Okay.
I would suggest, for operators or even the OOT vendors, if there's any particular ONU companies you're working with, I think we want to make the ONU supplier more visible to this community. I think that's one of the things I would really want to be happening, such as we have the two from Alpha Network sitting in the back. So you can always contribute code, contribute a resource without being a member. But we want you to be a member, but at the same time, we want you to contribute code too.
Okay.
So service provider, take on this.
The next item we had on the list, this is from our previous planning session that we had for what we thought would go in 2.1, was white box.
By the way, so the Python ONT adapter, can I put DT on that list also?
Python ONT adapter.
ONT.
ONT adapter.
OU.
That's a good question. So it's not a question in the matter of having resources. It's a question of having the right resources on that. So we had in the recent past no activity on that side. So I have to check internally if we have persons on board to be able to do work on that.
Well, it'd be good to have the ONU vendors provide some input to that, because we're doing a lot of work to translate from a tech profile and the open flow batch action rules into MEs that we need for the OMCI. So it'd be good to have some input and validation on that work.
Right. Yeah, I think before we as service providers put more resources, maybe it would be good to have some counterpart from the ONU vendors. So again, not trying to put anybody on the spot, but there's just an open invitation to help out here. So maybe Alpha Networks and others who are interested. Right, ONU vendors.
So I think for this item, like maybe DT and AT&T, we will reach out to potential vendors and then solicit them to be involved. Okay.
And I want to put a little request out. Thank you for mentioning people on the bridge as well. The current view I have on my screen, I cannot see anything that's coming in on chat. So if someone can let me know if someone is volunteering for anything or has questions from chat, then we can address those.
Yeah.
ONU adapter.
No, he's talking about what I have highlighted right now.
Oh, okay.
The in-band management through the NNI link. Yeah. Right, because we had that discussion earlier this week. So I think changing the scope item makes sense at this point. And I'll have 3.x right.
I think it's probably worth mentioning the feature though. There's some additional work around that.
From 2.6, right, to 3.x. Okay. And for this one, again, we would be looking for folks who would be signing up to take on this work.
I thought, is that true? Let me refresh the discussion. Yesterday, right, the BAL 3.x is, most of the work is on the driver side. So once the edge core provide a driver, there's nothing to be, it's not affecting the OpenOLT adapter. The additional features we need may need to be added to OpenOLT adapter.
Right, but that would come in a later phase. First, it's doing the migration at parity with 2.6 feature and functionality set.
Right.
So there's the OpenOLT agent that runs side by side with BAL on the physical hardware. That OpenOLT agent would have to change.
Right. I think that's what the demo they showed yesterday, right?
So the expectation is the adapter, whichever one, 1720, 21, Go, or Python, whichever one it is, should remain indifferent to BAL.
Right. I mean, there'll be some additions to incorporate open or
tech profile.
But it's more our features. Right.
Oh.
I think on that side, maybe we from DT side can help out to make this. As I said, it's probably not too much of work right now, but just to keep it together with with the roadmap and tech profile work.
Okay.
One thing I forgot to ask yesterday is, so edge core, when you guys create, you repackage the BAL to your new driver. Did you do that? Did you do some kind of testing against the VOLTHA platform before you issue the driver? You will?
Well, it's a minimal testing. From outside, we don't have to go and test the entire VOLTHA code.
But do you have a capability to see whether your driver work with the existing OpenOLT adapters?
As long as they keep the API.
Yeah. I mean, if we're talking about OpenOLT, if we're talking about the OpenOLT agent and adapter and the proto, right? Keep the proto the same. OpenOLT agent north, OpenOLT adapter south. Between the two should stay independent. Between OpenOLT agent being one process on the edge core and BAL and or the new daemon being the other process, talking to each other via localhost via that channel, that's the piece that we keep to. So making sure that that leg works. BAL 2.6 style function to BAL 3.0 style function, that's really where we just need to ensure that compatibility exists. If that works, northbound should fall in place.
I understand the question you're asking, Sean. Until BAL driver itself gets updated, no, they can't.
I know. But once they get updated before they release it, whether they will do some testing.
Yeah, but Jason, yesterday, he demonstrated the beginnings of
the working with the new valve daemon and the test harness that Broadcom provides. So yes, there's that verification that is going on, and assuming those set of functions work and we have the same set of functions in OpenOLT agent, it's just changing the method signatures and or adding new ones to support initializing the maple chip.
Okay. How to operate the email management, how to use the email management in VR to the CPU side, whatever is you want to management something. So it is very relative to the OpenOLT adapters go through to analysis.
Right now, if we talk about 3.0, there's no OpenOLT.
So before that, you need to upgrade to about the SDK first. So that's the task.
So question, can I put edge cord down on this scope item as well?
He said you have to.
Good, thank you. You know what?
They already
I'll
are.
get confirmation before I actually put it on slides. Okay. And then also, we have the discussion on the roadmap for val updates as well. And so it could be that the .x version that we target may be dependent on our discussion for which, what our target date is for the 2.1 release. So, I mean, can we fill this in from a 3.x to a specific version yet, or is it too early? Okay.
But the 3.1, I think yesterday was 2Q 2019, right? And I don't know what's the difference between 3.1 is the Broadcom internal release and 3.2 is the public release. Is that correct? I thought the external release always even number.
Yeah.
Yeah, but previously they said the 3.1 is their internal release schema. So 0.1, 0.3, 0.5, those are internal. I'm just saying yeah. So it's if we put in the 3.2, that's the Q3. So maybe that may not match the 2.1 release timeframe. Yeah, we cannot hear you.
So the question goes back to Broadcom then. When are they going to support the inbound management so that maybe there's like 3.15 or some?
This is going to be the val talk.
So the 3. They said the 3.1 release is.
So if that's a release, out then I think that's okay. No way. Yeah, 2Q that would be fine. Yeah.
I mean, there's the question of getting onto the 3.0 platform, and then there's the question of adding features that we need after we do that. So, I mean, I don't know if we want to wait until 3.2 to get on the 3.0 platform. So we might have to wait for 3.2 to get the management. But we want to wait for 3
The big effort is getting to 3.0. Once you're there, it should be incrementally easier.
My understanding was also that the switch from 2.6 to 3.0 would generate a significant portion of effort to make this migration, and then later on it's easy to incorporate.
That's
more
it. Once you
features.
move to 3.0.
Yeah, absolutely. Therefore, I would like to see the 0 there. Yeah.
3.0?
Yes.
Any?
We have to go and break the inbound management to 3.5.
Yeah, that's probably, that's my understanding. It's not a big thing if it comes with 3.2 later on, so then we incorporate it then when it is there. But the initial step to move to the 3.0 should be done as soon as possible.
I think the one thing I wasn't still clear, right? If the SDK 2.6 on Qumran, they probably already support in-band management, right?
You're not gonna get it in 2.6, Sean.
It sounds
No,
like.
no. What I'm saying is, in-band management probably is part of SDK supported today.
In 2.6?
No.
I don't know. No, yeah.
It's not part of BAL.
It's not part of BAL.
No.
Yeah, that's the point. It's not, there's no relation to the BAL, so you do it directly. There's no relation to BAL. If you do it right now, if you have a BAL 2. That's my understanding. If you have a BAL 2.6 incorporated in the adapter,
Yes.
then you can do the management, but it has no relation to BAL. So you do it directly on the SDK.
Right. Open source can't use the SDKs directly, right? It has to use VAL.
Yeah.
Okay.
It is.
So it cannot be open source. I think that's the, okay, got it.
That's the issue.
Move on.
Okay. Okay, so I have a note here about the BAL 3.2 enables in-band management. So we'll need to look at the timing for that in a future release, I think, to migrate from 3.0 to 3.2. The next item we had on here was one that shifted. Yes.
So the 3.x also supports additional traffic management capabilities in QoS that we need.
Yes.
That would be another line item.
But is that in 3.0 or 3.2 or 3.1?
There's a range of capabilities that come with 3.x, right? So 3.0 has some additional capabilities we need for multiple service flows. And I think direct access to the DBA parameters for upstream QoS as well.
Julie, we're coming at the 10 o'clock break time.
Okay.
How much more time do you need?
A fair bit.
Okay. So shall we take is that a good time to take a break?
Yes, we can take a break here. That's fine.
Okay. So 15 or 20 minutes break? 20 minutes break and then come back at the. Okay, back to you.
Okay, so I restarted the recording.
Okay.
All right. The next scope item we had on here from our previous planning work was the multiple TCON support and tentative. I'm not sure. Oh, yeah. Sounds like it's from over there. All right. When we looked at this previously, we did have a note down here to complete the tech profile work first. I expect that note still holds. We've poured over the functionality from the 1.7 to the 2.x branch. And once that is complete, then could look at adding in the development for the multiple TCON support. Yeah.
So Sean, do you think we should maybe after this week have another discussion regarding to what exactly the use case and the workflow from the Deutsche Telekom, not Deutsche Telekom, but the Turk Telecom side? Sarah is writing it up. Okay, so maybe potentially that can be reviewed on the CBA meeting, I guess. Okay.
So I had another note on here from our previous discussions where we thought there may be a dependency on having an upgraded version of ONU software, I'm not sure for which model, to support multiple TCONs. Do we know if that's a valid dependency or is that a non-issue at this time? Okay, so I'll make a note here. Mm-hmm. We captured it when we last looked at this scope item, so I kept it on there from our previous discussions. I don't remember the background there. Okay. Okay. So right now I've got Radisys, Netsia, and ONS targeted to work on the multiple TCON support. Do I need to,
Okay, the default right now, at least for our partner there, is 4 TCON support.
okay.
The maximum default is 40.
Okay.
I think it should be okay.
So let me go ahead and I'll remove that dependency then. All right. And John, do you know, is there anyone else I need to add on to the list for the multiple TCON work? Any other companies I need to add on to the multiple TCON work?
There may be changes in the decomposition.
Yeah. Yeah. That's blank for now. Okay.
But this kind of changes will happen in 1.7 also, right? Because it's demo, because they have 2 events in June. Not April, but it's potentially. What I'm saying, they may want to be in the 1.7 first before.
So I thought we were cutting 1.7 as soon as the tech profile work was done, and then all new feature development goes on to 2.x. Okay. Okay,
Okay.
okay.
So you take 1.7 and then multiply one.
Right. Then next item that was a target scope candidate was IPTV multicast. I think we've heard from a number of folks that that is a high priority item as well. So do we have folks who will be planning to work on that development? I'm sorry, could you repeat that? I couldn't hear you. Okay.
My question is that, you know, is that you're going to work on the 1.8 first? So I think they initially will be on the
Okay.
we don't know. On the open OT adapter portion, it can be done for the community, but on the ONO, it's not going to be a. The multicast already supported with 2.6. So Deutsche Telekom, are you guys the IPTV multicast? When do you first need it? Never? Can AT&T also say never? Erase the recording, but
we don't watch TV anymore. Our workflow is transparent with regards to VOLTHA for any multicast, the proxy, or snooping, so that is there's no layer 2 based multicast handling required within VOLTHA for our workflow. We do that on the service edge. Same goes for PVPoE, by the way. So there is just the channel is being transparently forwarded and.
Okay. So let me go back to the IPTV portion then.
So yeah, so my question right now is I think for AT&T this year, Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, it's not minimal. We probably don't see IPTV.
And remember, everything gets recorded, so.
Yes.
Just a reminder.
Yeah, for clarity, take it from the development side. This is not a priority.
Okay.
If you bring supplemental resources up,
Thank you, Troy. And by the way, Troy is higher level than I am. So do we want to put this in as a 2.1 roadmap?
Well, I think that takes us back to the timing question for Turk Telecom and Netsia. because I think they're the ones who need it soonest at this point. And if the 2.1 timeline works out with what they need for their purposes, then it sounds like some portion of that work they would be working on, that the ONOS and OF agent side of things, but we still would need some community support for the remaining work for that scope item. So I think we do have an open question here on prioritization of this particular item. So it sounds like priority is dropped for AT&T and for DT for this scope item, but it is still present for Turk Telecom, and we have some contingencies related to the NETSIA development based on the schedule for 2.1. So at this point, maybe we should go look at timeline and then come back. Will that help or hurt at this point? Should we continue going through the candidate items or shift over to look at ideas for what could be accomplished in a specific time frame, and where a logical point would be for the 2.1 marker? We may not have enough info to do that yet.
Right. So I'm leaning toward maybe for this, we were going to have a follow-up maybe early next week, next 2 weeks, and see where the adapter work, all that kind of stuff. I think also 2.0 dependency, right? So.
Okay, I'm going to label this one as at risk at the moment, and we can circle back and pick up discussion later today as well when we start looking at schedules. Okay. All right, and then PPPoE, I think for DT, heard that there's no VOLTA impact expected. It's going to be a transparent pass through. We have some other folks who are interested in PPPoE as well, right? Any different?
NTT, also yeah, PPPoE, but at the same time, I think it's above the VOLTA layer. Is that correct?
Okay.
How about?
So this one, I think we can break it out.
No, but no, because the Turk Telecom also wants PPPoE.
Sorry. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So this one we can remove from the scope. I can. All right.
Is that under format and then something?
Yeah, I'll have to find it later.
Or change your color will remind you.
Yep. Gray it out at this point. Ooh, that's a little too light, perhaps. Okay, so I'll clean that up afterwards. Then that brings us over to our second page of scope candidates that we talked about in previous planning sessions. One of those was multiple active NNI ports. We have a view on the priority for this item.
Right, Broadcom dependency, I think that's 3.2, right? I think that's 3.2. I may have that slide. Does service provider require multiple NNI port this year? AT&T does not. DT? No. DT? Multiple NNI port on OLT? No. I propose to remove. Okay, good.
Okay, and then this one we just added onto the list today, Envoy RESTful Web Services. Then the next item that had been on the candidate list for scope was white box OLT device management with Redfish.
It's cool on it.
Okay, and then we'll need to look at timing at some point. May not happen today, but on what you expect would be the duration for that development in terms of how many sprints you expect to need to complete the work. Okay. Okay, thank you. All right. The next item was the continuation of the work on alarms in PM. So we've had some discussion on that earlier this week as well.
So the action item, I think David is taking on at least to get the interface or there's some exploration work of normalizing the alarm, right? And then there's another action item. I think what Zach was also involved, and the two. And is AT&T definitely would like to continue to work on this one? Alarm and PM. No? Okay. That's a very loud one. How about, but
we do.
Oh, so yeah, okay. Okay. Right, that's the whole part. So I think that may require the whole CBA. So this is, by the way, this is the VOLTA 2.1. So it's still different than the CBA 2.0 release. So we have to go through that practice with the CBA also. Mm-hmm. Okay. Right.
There's definitely pieces that have to come into place as well, because we talked the other day about a layer at the adapter that contract, that these are the VOLTA alarms. So that definitely needs to be worked in control for VOLTA. Then there's the, okay, yeah, and then there's other types of alarms up above. So there's definitely VOLTA specific work that has to happen in the context of the overall work.
Right.
I think
JIRA already open on the very thorough. I think we should revisit those, and then because just alarm or PM, that's a very high level, right? So I think we need to make it as a scope so we can bring it down at some layer, and what is the applicable on the VOLTA side. So we need to make it. Probably would not be able to do that today.
Oh.
Yes. Right.
That's a good point.
And then there could be different things. Whether that circuit somehow specific priority to do that. Because kind of said we're cutting one out seven.
Well, Mike's got a valid point, which is why I brought that up.
Of 2.0.
Is that going to be community work that you're going to put back into where? And it's going to be, because this is 2.1 and that's different, right? Which is good, needs to be done, not arguing that, but it's to Mike's point.
And I think Saurabh would be happy to continue on. You brought in Saurabh, and I know Saurabh yesterday was happy to continue on 1.7, and I don't think that's what we're doing, but a little bit to go.
I think the more we continue on the 1.x path, the more trouble we're going to have down the line.
Right. My view for this planning purpose is 2.1. We have the timing issue to address in terms of aligning the 2.1 schedule with Turk Telecom Nexia needs, and that will drive where they do their development work. If we're going to have it in 2.1, then I think reusing the tech profile brigade is a viable option.
I just want, we got to be careful. We're
Yeah.
going to end up with a fork here, and it's going to be harmful.
End up with one. I thought we already had one.
Pretty much.
Someone's gonna bend the fork a little more.
I'll take us back to our roadmap slide, which is what we put on the wiki as well. And that has our cutoff, let's see, where we have the completion of the tech profile work and bug fixes only. That takes us through to the 1.7 tag. And then after that, all development work goes on to the 2.1, 2.x branch master. So that, I think we'll just have to be careful with the timing and the alignment of the work. And I suspect we're not going to be able to get to a decision today because we may have too many dependencies on figuring out the duration required for the different scope efforts at this point. Hopefully in a week or two, maybe we'll have a better picture of how many sprints are required for the different scope items that end up on our list. And then we can use that to, I think, have continued discussion with Nexia on alignment of the work and whether they can do it in the community or if it has to be on kind of their own separate work for their timeline. Okay.
But I think in general, the brigade effort for tech profiles is very productive because tech profiles cuts across the, essentially the entire development platform, right? So for the 2.x work for the enhancements, I think we should try and continue that brigade model. That worked out really well. Otherwise, it becomes, you hit all kinds of roadblocks, integration points.
So I think, thank you for that suggestion on the repurposing of the tech profile brigade, since it will be using mostly the same development resources to work on the multiple TCON effort as well. Okay, so we'll check with Sarov on that, and feel free to bring it up with him on your brigade calls as well. That might be another way to cover it. Okay. All right. Next item that we had carried over from previous discussions through 2.1 was VOLTHA software component upgrade. So at the time we talked about this with the 2.0 lockdown, we suspected this mainly was a documentation effort. So this one has carried over from our previous discussions. I wanted to check in with the group on this item.
This is like doing an update of one of the containers in VOLTHA.
I guess, for example, right now we have two pods right now running VOLTHA 1.6. So how do we support once the 2.1 got released? So we probably just have to tear everything down and then upgrade. So that's one reason why the documentation is how maybe using it. I think it will be a service affecting upgrade, right? Well, that's why we need to talk about it.
One .x and 2.0 is so deep. Upgrade path there from 1.x. Very deep.
Well, this is now 2.0 to 2.1.
I agree with that statement, but when you get to production, there needs to be a upgrade path from there forward.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So if we're not building in our software upgrade process, and it might be different component by component, but if we're not building that process into what we're going to go to production with, what comes next is kind of screwed. So we
got to build in this migration strategy process. How are we going to do containers? We're going to have 3 containers. We're going to don't talk to each other. We're going to take down one. It's going to come back on a new one, and it's the same thing or whatever it needs to do. But, I mean, how to take that? It can't be. I mean, it might be from one direction to the other, tear everything down and rebuild it all. But that can't be the next step. The next step. I mean, we can't keep pushing all about forever. Whether it's VOLTHA, whether it's SQL, whether it's the Crano approach that's part of this is a big, wide bunch of stuff. Yeah, I agree with everything you said. I think I had a similar rant about that. It doesn't do me any good to have a future. I got to tear out every CO every time you go to the feature. You got to go ground zero, blah, blah. No service provider like that. To me, it's a matter of this ain't VOLTHA problem. If there has to be capability. But then this SQL management for some Crano plus life cycle. This has been a discussion for this. It's not. Well, but so there's 2 different discussions. There's who's going to manage it, how you can manage it. But then there's probably the more probably is those components need to be upgraded, field upgradable without being catastrophic. If I have to shut down all my subscribers, it does take a little bit more. Well, we're not going to do somebody else. Aren't going to work. But have to be able to quickly upgrade, quickly downgrade. Use some of the components themselves need to be built, but either they don't hold their own state or they quickly develop.
Oh, definitely. Like that's why we went with 2.0, and that will allow that to happen.
Whether it could be done today or
Things like open ONL upgrades, OD upgrades on OSPP. Talking about the network upgrades, right? It's the software on the switches that going to control. Is this upgrade going to also cover that?
Well, but that's why I was saying divorce that from containers being upgradable, because I would imagine every service provider is going to have a different way they manage, or at least a nuance way they manage field upgrade and what.
I think the scope for this would be anything.
The containers themselves.
Right. But I mean, the threshold for that, or the interface for that, anything we home install, we should also do home. So right now we have a set of charts for SIVA, NEM, VOLTHA, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Helm has a mechanism, Kubernetes has a mechanism. We just need to make sure that those mechanisms work with the software we're putting in. There's elements beyond that, like OS upgrades, ONL upgrades, ag switch upgrades. Those almost are like a superset of just making sure our charts are upgraded. It's almost like we just need to start getting our charts upgraded.
We've also got almost app upgrade potentially, right? And that's not necessarily a container restart or a Helm upgrade.
Right. But no, it's the same problem. Right. Yeah.
So is the conclusion then that the first step would be a status quo analysis? So what is available, or what is doable today, and from there do some design work on what would be the desired target?
Yeah, I think look at the list of charts that we have and say we need to be able to perform an upgrade on them, and then whatever Kubernetes makes available, make use of it, and then whatever etcd or the interior software makes available, make use. I mean, that's a good first pass, and then you just work your way out from the VOLTHA charts to the NEM charts, and then you work into the Crano type layers.
Yeah, at least at that point you know the size of the mount.
Yeah.
But this goes back to some of the things we're struggling with internally that we've seen. ATM, who's where? It's such a tall stack of whether it's component upgrade, system upgrade, resiliency, HA, all of this is balled in. I tend to agree with what Don's saying. Matt, I think everybody is squinch it to this one layer and make sure all the capability sets are understood to one. what tools are, and then from there.
Right. Yeah, I think the offering the community provides to anybody who wants to use this, kind of like with apps, right? Helm, here are Helm charts, here are pieces of software. I can app to upgrade, I should be able to Helm upgrade. And then anything other than that, outside of that,
On a live system.
on a live system, yeah. So that's the responsibility of the software deliverer to make the package upgradable. Anything beyond that, it's needed. It's just a different scope now.
So another question, right? As the VOLTA project itself, right? Shall we have a software upgrade strategy apart from the whole SIBA umbrella? Or
I mean, so right now both provide sets of charts for the functionality you need. I think every layer, every group that provides charts, regardless if it's VOLTA, SIBA, or all of the above, should make it so their charts are upgraded. So for the sake of VOLTA, for VOLTA, it's used to be just, I think, the 1 or 2 charts, OF agent, VOLTA, etcd or something like that. Now it's going to be OF agent, core, adapter, et cetera, et cetera. We just need to make sure each of those individual charts that VOLTA itself represents are upgradable. I know ONS has been doing work on some of the XOS upgradable layers as well already. For upgrade, yeah. So SIBA side, northbound NIM has already been working on it. It's just now some of the VOLTA side pieces we need to look at.
Probably, so one thing probably needs to be said is we need a commitment from people that from 2.x on, interfaces, inter-component interfaces are only additive. They're never. You can't do a field upgrade. You have to orchestrate it.
Our etcd
So
schema
it's just a little extra work that we need to do, but we have to maintain that build.
Well, is this again non-breaking changes to interfaces on minor upgrades, potentially breaking changes, upgrades?
I would prefer never to break interfaces, and if you have to add fields to it, you allow the original call to have default values for the new field. I mean, if at all possible, it just gives you much better flexibility.
Yeah, I get that, but then you can't. It's hard to say this interface will never ever change or break.
I understand, but you can always just add a new interface, deprecate the old interface, and leave it. And it's more work. I know what I'm asking, but from an operator's perspective,
I absolutely understand
the more flexible we can be.
So it's like nail down the protos, nail down the etcd schema. Right? Once those are fairly well set, then it should be easy enough to keep those in mind. And anytime there are proto changes added, and anytime there are etcd structural changes, have a script to, like the SQL, move your fields, move your tables, move your columns, however you need to, but to keep things working.
And I'm not saying an infinite set of provisions.
Yeah.
We're not behind ourselves, 1 or 2. But
At some point, we're going to have the same problem with 2 to 3, like we got 1 to 2.
Yeah.
Back here doing this, who's left in the back?
Well, then you start saying, can I run the 2 systems in parallel and
Yeah.
slowly rotate over?
Yep. I think that I'd let the natural.
But 50% traffic on one. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, all the stuff that Kubernetes provides.
But just for clarity, from one of the things that Sean has said, is I would not, although the same mechanisms across SIBA and VOLTA are consistent because, help chart upgrade, SIBA, VOLTA, good idea. But just because they happen to be using the same thing does not mean that they're tightly coupled.
right, I would like to remove the dependency. So potentially, whatever VOLTA is doing, and SIBA can trigger the same mechanism and then to upgrade the VOLTA part. So what I'm saying is, what we're doing, we can use that as install the VOLTA in ONOS separately or as a part of the SIBA. Make sense? Yes. So.
Which is the right way to do it, yes.
Yeah, but I think I would
Just don't ever
Don
get rid of
said never
old
change
energy.
yeah.
No,
I would say even though releasing
Only grow.
against a
Only grow.
set
Never
version,
shed
a
your skin.
release version of Volta.
So I think what I was getting out of this is because I think different service provider, they have different orchestration process, different upgrade process. But so I think as a community, we just have to assume whatever we provide to this community can be used whatever method other people do. But at the same time, we just make our, how to say that, we want to be flexible, but not too flexible. Anyway, that's a moot point. So what shall we capture? So whatever Julie captured on this one, is that acceptable to move forward? And then is that something we want to establish on the 2.1?
So my first recommendation here actually was going to shift it a little bit. It sounds like we do need some sort of survey or gap analysis done. I was going to suggest that we line up volunteers to work on that and then do a readout on a TST call. And then we can talk about next steps from there.
Any volunteers? AT&T?
Sure. Yeah, no problem. Okay.
Hey, Don is the only Don among this community. We have two Seans. Stop it.
Okay. So I think this one, whether it's a formal scope item for 2.1 is TBD at this point. I think it's definitely a topic that needs further discussion with the group, but it may be something we can handle largely through a TST discussion, and then with some JIRA issues maybe opened up to complete some of the related tasks.
But again, back to the community. So is DT, the Turk Telecom, and NTT, you guys agree with the status, what we've provided here, and the other participants? Okay. No, what I'm saying is, do they want something different?
Are there any objections to the suggestion I just outlined to kind of follow up on the TST calls and try and get the gap analysis performed and discussed within that forum?
I think it's good because it's good to get started because we need to do some requirements and design work, and status quo would be the first step to get started. So it'd be good to have it in this release or in this 2.1 that we are talking about.
All right, thank you. Then I think we can move on to our next item, which had carried over from 2.0 into 2.1 for candidate scope item. That's the large topic of VOLTA security.
Let me ask one question. Anybody do any kind of scan on the VOLTA package yet? Security scan?
Like a
No. Yeah.
Licensing, you mean?
I think it means black duck. I think it means.
So I mean, isn't that a lot of times you have some test suite to scan whether there's a holes or whatever security backdoors or whatever? Yes.
That mean we're not obliged to do more internally? I think it mitigates a lot of overcome.
yeah, also from our perspective, that is a really big big topic. So it's just a small phrase, but it's a whole bunch of things you can have underneath that. And obviously it is operator dependent. So I think each operator has a different view on that security item. One proposal from our side is similar to what we have to the software, to the upgrade stuff, that we start with a kind of a status quo analysis, and yeah, and in that terms we can take this. We can do some analysis, and then we can discuss it. We can bring it into a TST call or whatever, and then discuss it, and then see how we would go forward. Just to start it.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we get very early on you have to have interconnect to run pods. So I mean, things like that. Identify that, talk about that.
Well, or
I think that ties back into the upgrade
replica of internet repos. Yeah. So in our environment, you know, the CO elements, the pod, there's no way to apt or Helm install anything from anywhere. So, you know, from our point of view, we're already starting off from a complete, you know, air gap to everything. We now have to go through the exercise of having an internal repositories for these Helm charts, the app repos, you know, the MAS servers to get everything built out. Some of that is common to other infrastructure elements we're dealing with anyway. But yeah, everyone has a different environment, how you get your packages, how you get your Docker images. You know, it's really just up to your greater network.
It's just it is something we've worked around on our side ourselves, but that would I would consider probably be a pretty big security goal. That you have to open everything up to the internet in order to do that.
Right. Well, just to be
building the pod, but I mean, once the pod is built,
you want to do the upgrade part.
Yeah,
I mean, this is the part where, depending on what kind of our approach is decrease surface area, replicate everything in an internal repository, and then have the security protocols that once it's on our side, then we have every, you know, app come from our internal.
Yeah.
And then all the mechanisms we've got that kind of are built into half the stuff we use, the one half. That naturally occurs, but we've got to figure out how to get it on our side that we trust will put into our pool.
In our initial deployment, we ended up having to run a Docker repo, Helm repo, and apt repo, even so that the whole environment could be run literally from somebody showing up with a laptop and a thumb drive and servers on a pallet to get the whole thing going. So, I mean, that's obviously the extreme case. We don't want to run app repos inside every single pod, but, you know, initially our security model was such that we couldn't do anything else other than that. So we'll need to, you know, everybody needs to kind of expand it so that these cloud-based resources are available inside their network. But yeah, it implies the security of what's there today.
So that's all good. And the one thing that I would sort of point out is that every carrier I've spoken to intends not just to do SIBA, intends to do edge compute applications. And when SIBA is a standalone pod, you can do a lot of the sort of, we're going to isolate it from everything and get away with that. But as we think about the future, and I'm not saying this has to be in 2.x, but as we think about the future and, you know, put together SIBA with COMEC and NAIC or whatever it winds up being, we'll really need to rethink how security works when you may have to offer public cloud services off the same pod where you're going to offer SIBA.
Yeah, this isn't unique to SIBA in any way. Anybody trying to do any sort of cloud native containers, Helm charts, Docker, anything. It's the same problem.
But okay, so I'm being a little bit superficial here. Or what I see, you know, on some news tomorrow or something, you know, we scan the SIBA and then there's a big security hole, you know. So you know, I don't think that will be.
So I mean, there's two parts to it. One, there's the environment you put it in, and then one, there's the security of just software as it is available for anyone to use. I think both of them have to be addressed separately. Right? One is run Nessus against it as it is and make sure there's nothing integral into any of the components that are a problem. But then the other level is, okay, now that you've walled it all off properly, make sure somebody just can't get to it both have to be approached, right? You can't ask the people who develop Apache to make sure that where you put Apache is set up right.
So what I'm so maybe I will say if that's not 2.0 or whatever, whenever, is maybe I welcome the people, especially if you have some security background or have some security diagnostic tools.
The important part was the last part of what Matt said was, I don't know that that's a community problem.
No, I think the Nessus scan on the software as it is, I think
that
is
that needs
to be done.
But
And I
you
believe
go and
there's
put it
already
somewhere.
Jira for that, one of the early ones.
I mean, the primary path to affect the system would be either RPC or a Kafka message, both of which I'm sure are getting the crap beat out of them by the wild, trying to figure out where the all is.
Sure. But I mean, it could be something like leaving a default password on something or stuff like that. I mean, that you need to catch that. Or not having a password.
Yeah, I mean, our current approach is we're not using authentication, inter-component authentication, because we expect to have a big wall around this. If we were going to put it into a more shared tenant type space, block every bit of it.
Also goes back to, do you start encrypting?
But yeah, that's
Yeah. So
So
what about all the sources that go into this? I've heard laments from everybody that you could build something today, and in 20 minutes something else has changed and the build no longer works. Is there a need to snapshot the source tree at certain points, maybe at a release point, or is this something that's going to be left up to the end user?
Do that now, like 1.6, 1.7 were snapshotted, and with the introduction of NEM, the versioning of the whole pod has gotten better, right? That is improved. Now we can go and say we need these specific Docker images, and we can do that now. But before, yes, it was an issue where master, image from yesterday is different from master image today, and it could have been very, very confusing. That has improved.
But do we want to have it to where we've got the build, it specifically calls out the FTP version versus just go, but for everything that goes, I think we've got to have that.
Yeah.
Because it just can't be, go get me the latest and greatest, which there's a lot of people's habits go, well, I'll just take advantage of whatever the.
Yes, it does.
I think that addresses what Tom's got. As long as we know what that manifests, nobody slipped in a ball bat or an asterisk going, just go get me stuff.
And that was
the latest.
But that's considerable. The helm bar.
That's just
specified.
Right, so someone can still do that.
Anyone can take an image, rename it,
Yeah, the only way you can get around that is if you're going off SHA and not.
But I mean, before, yes, it was a problem, but I think a lot of the work that went in last year with NEM that may have not been as clearly pointed out was now the ability to name versions of the images are possible, and that can be trickled down. And that was something, at least for our initial deployments, we struggled with, was making sure we grabbed the right thing. Now we know we can grab the right thing.
But instead of putting them up on Docker Hub, we could run our registry.
Sure.
With one person, like say Zach, that's allowed to commit images to it.
We have that all automated, that'll.
Yeah.
But so the question was, can somebody make commits there? What you're talking about to Docker Hub, right? So nobody. I would encourage people to train to be automated, but that doesn't require that. A wall of shame.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Better.
Right.
Okay, Julie?
Okay, so Bjorn, I wanted to make sure I captured this right. I think I heard you say that DT was willing to do that initial status quo analysis on the security side? Okay, all right. So I think right now, similar to what I have for the software component upgrade item, the scope for 2.1 is not defined at this point. We have some follow-up discussions that will happen. Same thing for security, so we'll continue discussion on the TST calls. And once we have reports ready to go for the discussion, then we'll slot those into specific days.
So potentially the Jira right now, I think the security management related stuff, all those stuff on the Jira for the VOLTHA Jira, we may need to, you know, because there are a lot of requirement there.
Yeah, so I've captured that with a small bullet here that the community scope for 2.1 requires further definition. So we have 5 large, I believe it's 5 large epics on the security side with a number of subtended stories. And then we need to determine what is in scope for the community after we have the first readout from BT. We can start those discussions, I think, on what role the community needs to fill for the VOLTHA security scope item and what is achievable in 2.1. What requirements would be. I think we need to first get the status quo readout and then reassess what would go into the community work and what would be done individually by integrators or by service providers. Other thoughts? Okay, then that brings us on to our next slide. So we have a few more items remaining that were candidates. One of them was flow statistics. Any views on this item?
Do you remember which requirement this one coming from?
I thought it came from you, but I could be wrong. I may be wrong.
Of course. And I say,
maybe it was added during our planning call. We were looking at roadmap a while ago.
But
I
so
have a clear definition.
on the P, I think this is PM related, right? So on the PM scope, do we want to retrieve stuff on per flow basis? And do we have the mechanism to do that? No comment. Then I'll defer the.
Okay. Remove this one from our list.
Yeah. Per flow. Let's defer this. But I mean, I will hope the PM will be capture this, you know, maybe part of the PM.
That's a question. Let me just move this out to future or delete it from the list at this point.
Let's delete it from the list. And I think the Kent is on his way out.
Okay. So if it needs to come back in as a scope item for a future release, then it can be brought in with some more concrete requirements at that point. Then I do have on here a placeholder also for OpenOMCI enhancement. And this one, I think we had some of the next steps or future enhancement possibilities presented by Chip earlier this week. So I wanted to check with the group on what we think scope should be for 2.1 for OpenOMCI work. I think we covered the extended message. Yeah.
Yeah, extended message format, any support for the debug message type, and any support for test and test results message type.
Yeah, and the extended format one has performance implications, so I think that one might be a good one.
That would probably,
if that one was the only one of those three, then that would be good.
that'd be good. That I don't think there will be any OMCI work. There'll be an OMCI task or service provisioning task. That would be a more ONU specific kind of work.
So yeah, task construction, now that we have the task framework, it's create tasks that match tech profile characteristics, you know.
All the required MEs and are available today.
Really a question of, do tasks become so general that they become library level tasks, or do they stay tasks to the individual to the ONU? Some tasks are like MIB reset is a task that the library provides as part of its general capabilities, but the task for setting up a 1GEM port, one extended VLAN mapping mapper is right now buried inside the ONU, but if it's one that everyone can use, then promote it up to the library.
It's Python based. Yeah. and I guess the a fourth bullet is any kind of measurement for performance or scalability.
Right. Then on this one, I had tentatively put a few names down here, but I wanted to see who would be expecting to work on OpenOMCI enhancements then. And specifically kind of the prioritized list we have, well, top priority being extended message format and then others as resources permit. I had tentatively populated this with Tibet and AT&T and CIG, but now that we've had some discussion with the group on what the scope is, I wanted to check on who would be expecting to work on this in 2.1.
I mean, I could help on story definitions and scope. I'm not sure what my availability to do the work.
I can.
Bye.
Bye.
See ya. We need to.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll AT&T we'll stay involved in this one too.
But the OT needs, you gotta remember correctly, extended.
As long as the proto is big enough.
Yeah, the proto is fine because it's a bytes field, so it has no fixed limitation.
So yeah, it'll pass through the bigger field. Yeah. I guess as long as BAL, in the case of OpenOLT, I can't imagine why it would care, but as long as that indicate the API call back to BAL supports it as well.
Yeah,
it might be worth checking. But.
Yeah, you probably need to check, make sure the edge core can support that.
Right.
Size, large frame to be put on the on.
But yeah, we'll
okay.
We'll figure it out. Tech profile? No, this one is more related to sending larger groups of OMCI messages for anything.
for anything, right? This gets back to
Streamlining the
right.
turn-up process.
Yeah. I mean, so with tech profile, I imagine there will be more need for more messaging for more fields. And if those can all be bundled up into fewer calls, yes. But this one really gets back to like ONU turn up and having to transfer the 300 or 200 or so MEs for a MIB upload so that it ends up being, maybe 5 calls or 10 calls versus 200.
Okay. Anyone else want to add their name to the OpenOMCI work? All right. We'll leave this as the starting point for now. Thanks, everyone. The next candidate scope item we had on the list was for GPON support. And that was, we did not have an owner yet.
We need an adapter comparable or similar to the OpenOMCI. We have already for the HDF phone boxes. We find an OTP based box quite similar to the HDF phone one. So therefore, we don't expect any effort for that. But there will be some effort. So and of course we
I mean, when you make together with the on the driver's side, I mean, would you be targeting using OpenOLT adapter and just re-implementing it, right? Which I would think would be the best.
Because everything else should match, right? I mean, all the OMCI, G988, all the ONU stuff should all work just the same.
And I thought that, during the BBWF last year, they already demoed a GPON box with I think it's Catel. Basically, yeah, they already demoed using the same OpenOLT adapter. There's no.
There you go. Yeah.
So
the resource manager has support for different types of PON as well.
Yeah, the ranges for IDs are different, but yeah, as long as resource manager can take into account the ranges, which it should, then yeah.
And
Okay.
So we put down DT's name.
All right. And then we also had EPON support as a candidate for the release.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, great.
All right. All right, thank you.
And Tippett? Oh.
Okay. And then also I captured a note from some of the earlier discussion about porting BBSim functionality over to 2.0 as well. Did I capture that correctly?
As I made presentation today, I think I propose to add API, gRPC API or REST API to control the control the enable and disable of OLT devices and ONU devices that are simulated inside BBSim. And if there are any other features anyone wants to add the BBSim, I want some comments or something.
And I thought that because the BBSim is only used to open the framework should not.
Okay.
That's right.
Let me just put it as enhancements then. Okay, thank you.
It's probably more in work in setting up your environment with multiple containers to have a place to run it. But BBSim itself should, talk the same proto that the OpenOLT does.
Okay.
And so I can put, should I put both NTT and ONF down, or, okay.
And are you going to continue work on the BBSim? No? Okay.
Okay. That gets me through the list that we had from previous discussions on roadmap planning and so forth. Are there other scope items for 2.1 that would need to be addressed that we missed? We tried to capture them as we went along in this discussion.
No more.
Next is timeline discussion. And then seeing if we need to segment this further.
So the changes that were made to the proto for OpenOLT, for real, needs to, all those same proto changes need to be implemented in BBSim. Okay, yeah. All right, so there were changes made to OpenOLT agent that need to be ported to BBSim. Okay, yeah.
It's just a matter of stub and amount, right? They're going to be no logs.
Well, it's sending the message. Some of it's fudging the OMCI.
Yeah, so you use Wireshark to capture what the message should look like.
Yeah, that's something.
So then I wanted to start looking at timeline. So as usual, we end up with a fairly significant amount of requested scope items. And with our current schedule for 2.0, as we talked about earlier, that we're targeting completion on May 3rd. Then that means we could start the 2.1 sprint, the first sprint on May 6th. And I'm assuming 3-week sprints again for the development work. And then I've just kind of mapped out a rough schedule for a few sprints so we can start to see where dates line up. So I think what we need at this point is to start collecting input from the various teams working on scope items for how many sprints they think they will need to complete that work. And we have a template we've used for that in the past. So I'll clean this up with some changes we made to scope items. I'll make those same changes over here. And so we'd be lining up, again, technical leads who typically start with pulling in a bunch of the new stories that need to be created and trying to map out the sequencing of the work as well within the smaller team for a specific scope item. So we line up those things and then go into the estimating how many sprints we would need based on the current number of developers that have signed up to work on that item. So I need to start collecting that input. I don't think we likely will be able to get good numbers for those today, but if we can start working on that in the background on the specific scope items, that would be a help. And then I think similar to what we had for the 2.0 planning, there may be a few items that have dependency on other work completing first. For example, we want the porting over of the tech profile functionality to happen first, and then once that's done, we'd start moving on to multiple TCON support, for example, and then trying to line up the dependencies and when we expect the work to start on the various scope items. So that, I think we can cover some of this over the next few weeks on VOLTHA calls, but I would like to get the leads assigned for the scope items so that we can start having the teams discuss those in the background and then pull in information as it becomes available onto our planning decks that we'll have this one up on the wiki. So that's sort of the format. And again, I need to clean this up a bit because we've removed a few scope items and added a few things in. So I'll do those updates. So I don't know, so Bjorn and Sean and others, do you think we need to talk about a target release date yet, or first collect the sprint estimates and then reassess what is reasonable scope for 2.1? Are we going to have it schedule driven or scope driven?
I would prefer to have a scope.
Okay. Okay. All right. Then I don't need to talk about schedule at this point. I will want to give some feedback to Sarov on the ONF side, because the schedule that we end up with here will feed into the SIVA schedule. So I think they have the 2.0 plan for July, and we may not line up with that, because right now if we anticipate 4 sprints for development, then that's going to take us through the end of July. So then I think also when we start getting the estimates for the development effort for the TCON work and other things, then hopefully we can see where that lines up. I think maybe the current tech profile, the Go-based adapter work is supposed to complete at the end of May. So that would roughly take us through the first sprint of 2.1 for that to complete. And then we would have the porting over of the tech profile functionality and trying to figure out how long you think that will take on in terms of sprints. And then we can follow on to that with a start time for the profile work. And here's kind of our rough look, at least at the best case schedule we have where we're starting with things. So the date you need this by is again, yeah, okay, that's what I thought. All right. Right. Exactly, yeah. Right, and that's that's part of what we try to capture on this is our expected start sprint for development work, taking into account the dependencies on other scope items. So it'll be a work in progress, I think, over this next month as we collect input from the various teams. Okay, so then I think what I will do, rather than trying to populate the list of individual names at this point, I think we know who some of them will be. If we want to, for 2.1, if we can assign a tech lead at this point for the scope items, then at least we have that portion of this nailed down, and then you can start coordinating the team. So for the Golang-based OLT adapter, I'm expecting that tech lead would be Redis. Is that correct?
Yeah, Amit.
Yeah. I'll just bold it for my reference here. It would be the lead. And then for the overall tech profile work, coordinating the import of the functionality over to 2.0 and coordinating any work that happens downstream of that for impact. Would that, again, Sean, would that be you leading that one, or would it be combined between you and Sarah, or is it something else at this point? Okay.
Combined between me and Sarah, great.
Okay. So I'll just put Sean down right now, and okay, yeah, okay. So we'll start with this for today's discussion. I'll clean this up later. And then on the migrating from Bell 2.6 to 3.0, would the lead for that be EdgeCore or DT? Mm-hmm.
I think it's going to be.
Can I put Broadcom down here too? Okay. So I think I heard this would need to be a combined. Oh. Okay. Thank you. All right. And then I think from the discussion we just had on best case for schedule, we do know that the work for multiple TCONs would be coming too late for Netsia. for their timeline, so they'll be working on development on their own separate effort for that on the 1.x stream, I believe. But then working on the 2.1 side of this, then I'm not sure who we would have for the lead. And there will be some other dependencies to work out on what resources we do have available. So I think that will be some further discussion as we get closer. Oh, okay. So I'll put ONF as the lead for that. And then hopefully that will follow in with the off of the folks working on the Tech Profile Brigade. And then way down at the bottom here, okay, so we've got the IPTV multicast is at risk right now. And so I think that one is, I just mixed up a couple items. I'm sorry. I pulled in some of the multicast discussion into the multiple TCONT discussion on the NETSIA side, so sorry about that. Okay, so for IPTV multicast, at this point, that one is at risk. We don't have anyone signed up to do work on the adapter side, for example. So I think on this one, we do not have an owner identified today, as best I know, so it's at risk for inclusion in 2.1, unless I hear otherwise. Okay. Okay. So we'll revisit that later then. Okay, thank you. And then on the Envoy RESTful Web Services, we have ONF and Sienna down on that. I think Sienna would be the lead. And then for the Redfish, that would be Edge Core. And then the next two items are ones that are under further investigation right now for scope work as well. So that would be the software component upgrade. So Don, you and I will have a discussion later related to the survey about the what's supported today by the components. And then on the security side, then Deutsche Telekom is going to take an action item to do some analysis there. And then we'll revisit both of those topics on future TST calls, but at the moment, we don't have specific scope defined for 2.1. And then flow statistics, we're deleting that from the list. In terms of an owner or a technical lead, I should say, for the OpenOMCI enhancements work, so we can have a technical lead who is not a developer. So would we, and I know Tivit, you said, Chip, that you'd be willing to do some work on story definitions and scope, but development work would need to be picked up by AT&T and CIG and any others interested in joining that effort. So from this group of people, do we have a sense for where the best placement is for the tech lead for 2.1 work? Okay, thanks, Matt. You're off the hook, Chip. All right, and then GPON support, we have DT, I think, taking the lead there. And EPON support, so NTT, Tibbet, you said you would support that. NTT, are you going to be the lead for that work? Is that the expectation? The lead? Okay, I'll put you down as a shared lead then. And then the BBSim enhancements, are we going to have a single technical lead there, or is it going to be shared? NTT and ONF? NTT? Okay. And I think that got us through our list. Okay, yeah. So thank you, everyone. I think this is good progress today. Then we can start filling out the individual names on the development teams. And then if I can have the tech leads start looking at the work that's going to be required or that they're envisioning for the scope for 2.1, then we can start pulling together story point estimates and looking at the number of developers working on the effort and trying to map out the sequence of the work in the various sprints. So this will be an ongoing process. I think on the draft slide I had here that we do, we usually try to do the planning session and set aside a week for the creation of epics and user stories about a week before, but I think we'll just go April through May. So we can start getting those input as soon as you have a sense of the scope required for 2.1. That will help us with our resource planning. Okay. Anything else we need to talk about related to 2.1 planning today? And we will have follow-up on the TST calls as well. Okay. It was just last call if there are additional topics we need to discuss today related to 2.1 planning specifically. And then we'll have more discussion on the Tuesday, Thursday calls. Okay, I think we have a good starting point at least for this, but, and we have, I should capture the agreement to be scope driven, not schedule driven. Okay, so I'll clean this up and then I'll post it. I think I'll replace the current link we have to planning slides with a link to this draft once I do a little cleanup. Then everyone will have access to view it from the wiki. And then over the next few weeks, we'll start refining those charts in the back with the resource assessments and estimates for the work. Okay, back
Thanks,
to you,
Julie.
Sean.
David, is that okay if we postpone your demo to one of the call?
Of course.
And the other announcement is, Julie will remain as the Scrum Master, and then so now both Bjorn and I will, she will stay on the Scrum. Julie, there's another one for future work items.
To 2.2 or beyond, so it's really maybe too early to have.
Okay.
Thank you. So I can show you what we had up here at the moment. I was expecting we would move some of the things likely from our 2.1 planning into 2.2 or 3.0. One topic is the HA for OpenOLT adapters and ONU adapters. And then I added a placeholder here for the migration from 3.0 to BAL 3.2. And then G.fast had originally been in 2.0 and then it got moved out to 2.1. And I think at this point it would get moved to the following release. But again, as always, we're contribution driven. So if someone has work to contribute, feel free to inform me of that so we can get you scoped in appropriately. And these are the only items I had there today. So it's going to be brainstorming for kind of next steps in the release cycle for VOLTHA and what people are really wanting to focus on after we deliver 2.1.
And
there might be multiple parts. Abstraction, the hardware abstraction of G.fast, adapter may not be something that's important, but subtending a G.fast node off of a PON that is there may be things that have to happen there or like that.
service, I mean, it's not really a service, it's now an infrastructure fee. Get that be able to be configured.
And I think
Yeah, absolutely. So if we are talking about such kind of subtending GFast DPU, yeah, that plays a role. But nevertheless, yeah, we have a solution for how to handle it, how to handle it now, which is not affecting VOLTHA so much. So it has some relations because we are only want to abstract the ONU part of such DPU, and we keep the GFast part of the DPU as it is today. So as it is managed by a NetConf Yang and the persistent management agent. So that's and the kind of event management. So that's our solution for now, and we would like to avoid any blocking of resources. Therefore, that item, if we are talking about abstraction of the GFast part of the DPU, I would like to see in a 3.0. So that's a major thing from my perspective, and it's not that time critical for DT at least. So if someone else has another opinion on that, of course, feel free to.
Feel like so, like in AT&T's case, the way we currently do it is that fast devices are buying C tags that then get encapsulated into an outer S tag as they would use. So I don't know that particular mechanism is something that we're doing today inside of VOLTHA. I don't know that it's included, but it would be definitely a different tech profile. It would be a different kind of service arrangement, and if it's already supported in what we do today with VOLTHA, good. But if there's that subtending part, it's not what we're doing today. So
okay, if you have for the ONU part of the DPU requirements which are not covered today in VOLTHA, then that might be a slightly different story. Then
that was the part where I think there's
okay.
Might be two parts to G.Path.
It should just be the closed.
Well, the OMCI definition for the mapper has to say allow not just zero VLAN, allow all the Z's. I mean, it just works. Setting up the right VLAN, which bubbles up all the way to. So there's.
Okay. Okay. From my perspective, these kind of adaptations, okay, that might be part of a 2.2 or 3. That makes sense. But the abstraction of the GFast part of the DPU, I would say in a 3. Yeah.
But can we go back to the first line item? I think we're probably, my gut says we'll likely achieve this as a consequence of making this deal. Right? If we can, the OpenOLT adapter and everything else, if we can do hot swapping of revs on that, and the same mechanism likely will achieve. Yeah.
Just for my lack of knowledge, I mean, with the adapters today, I mean, do we already have the ability to spin up multiple same adapter and getting them assigned to various particular sets of locations, or no, I need one adapter to do everything?
Right now, as it is, the one adapter starts up and the list of matching vendor IDs actually is the one-stop shop for any that match that pattern. If we decide to scale it out behind the scenes further to have different processes in this. Right now, the one process that is the OpenONU process says if you have these 5 or 6 vendor IDs. ONU. So OLT side, it's really just a matter of, I think when you specify in adding your OLT, the particular factor you want. I say pre-provision OLT, open OLT, it still goes to the one adapter in process that handles all open OLT processes.
Yeah, I guess.
So there isn't a process per OLT, there isn't a process per ONU.
But if we solve for hitless upgrades, likely the same mechanism will be.
versus HA maybe, one of them just unexpectedly goes down, the other one can pick it up.
Yeah, so.
That's how we are defining it.
So some of this is dependent with the interaction with the core, but when, let's say two of them both start up and two of them say, I am claiming to be the handler for all things open OLT, there would be a decision to say, you're elected to be the one who's in charge, but the other one makes it passively saying, I've been seeing what you're doing, but I'm not actually interacting with the outbound. The other one goes away, the core says, now you're on point, and he just picks it up.
I mean, the overlap between the two different needs is probably 80 to 90%.
Also, Blossom yesterday they talked about supporting it is also a share of activities that we made.
Yeah, I agree.
We also have
But I would say it's probably a more meaningful conversation if we can achieve the upgrades, then we will know what else has to, I mean, you know what I'm saying?
There was also discussion around that inverse affinity
Right.
router as well, right? I mean,
I'm
that's,
sorry, I can't hear you.
Yeah, the southbound, yeah. So,
Bjorn, do you have anything additional? I think with AT&T,
On the GFAS stuff, I don't have any additions.
the other item, I think AT&T.
No, I agree.
is there a standard for that?
Happening.
Ongoing in the ITU, I guess.
Things happening. Any other questions?
I have one schedule-related question for next week. So we do have an active sprint going on. Thursdays, we try to reserve for technical deep dives. Do we need a call this next Thursday, a week from today? Or do we postpone that because we've had,
Also, ONS system.
you're right, ONS, yeah, is next week. Usually we do technical topics if we can, or demos. But it sounds like we may have overlap for people's schedules because of.
Sounds like that meeting we'd like to attend.
Yeah.
How many people are going to the ONS?
Oh, yeah, we could probably cancel that meeting.
No.
Oh, you're done.
Or cancel ONS.
Done.
Right?
Jordan has the mic now. Sit down.
Hey, I can still speak pretty loud. Go ahead.
Around the lake.
There's still a lake out there too.
Put it on the record. Don has been trying to put me down to the lake.
Oh, Don's threatened to. If Don had tried, he'd been.
But Don was succeeded.
Page 6?
It's way down at the bottom.
Yeah. I think at least we. Right, Thorough is saying he's going to review some of the code.
Yes, you're right. Thank you. Okay.
Thorough was regret he left early. And
You leave early, you get action items.
And again, right, so anything else? So again, we work on.
So, sorry,
Yeah, so just found the microphone again. So no, with regards to the scalability, right, that would be also for 2.2. One of the things probably where we wanted to look at. Probably. Yeah, and what I'm thinking more is, well, we discussed right the approach of how can we clarify to the community about our releases and the expectation. Let's say what should be formally would be the numbers for our news and so on to be supported, but looking at verification and testing, should we plan some items and actually, as we discussed, making sure that we can run performance tests and scalability tests on those. Could be both. So control plane, but as well also. Right. So no, definitely BBSim would be the foundation for that to test on the control plane side, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, do we just need to plan, let's say I wouldn't call it a brigade, but a larger effort, so to make sure we have this verified, which goes into QA. I mean, this item should maybe just be called QA, quality assurance. And I'm thinking about testing, so that might be performance testing, but all sorts of other verification testings that we would want to do. Because we, from our side, would want to see that release as close to deployment ready, right? So there's no, I mean, not a large feature set actually in, but that needs to be developed on top, but we need to put effort into verifying and testing what we have more than we did before.
Just saying add a scope item for documentation?
Yep. And you know, like I would think that reply will help out.
So is there are we putting a name down at this point? I'm waiting for them to say whether that's the case. Yeah. And we were on the 2.2 for that.
No, I said, you know, DT and community. I think each coder needs to make sure. I think Zach has that get booked, you know, all that kind of stuff needs to start.
I don't think we have a specific scope item for testing. So we did have, you know, in 2.0, we did have the expansion of the automation test bed and test suite as a formal scope item. So we can add something like that here too.
So so the way I see it is, you know, when you introduce the testing portion, we didn't give enough time for you to go over that kind of stuff. So maybe we should bring that up topic back, and on the VOLTHA side and on the SIBA side too. So okay. Any other last item?
Hold on 1 second. So for the testing scope item, what are we putting down in terms of? Yeah.
Bill, do you know about the certification brigade that Jabel is leading? Right, and then I don't know whether scalability is one of them. Okay, and I think they want to create that to certify some equipment if they want to come in and they say it passed the brigade. Yeah. Right. That's part of, I think, so there's an automation testing test suite available right now with ONF. So once they have, let me correct me if I'm wrong, but I think once their automatic test suite has stabilized, then they can bring different devices. So the stabilize or finalize that test suite, I think that's part of the part you're thinking about.
I guess what I'm saying is,
yeah.
We're gonna have this in every release.
Yes.
Right.
The standing way that ONF wants to handle that, that would be nice, but the ad hoc of the day to get them every time. But maybe that's not work. The work to make them really.
Yeah.
Let's really carry it forward.
VOLTHA,
I walk away with that.
I believe that the end goal is that the first goal is you have an LT with a different adapter that we do the same thing we do with our LT, it works.
More like interop, right? Like interoperability testing. Yeah.
Well, that's not even well. I'd say define performance. Have you done like long-term runs to see how the memory footprints change? Okay.
So I would suggest, Julie, we maybe in the future TSC call, we invite the certification brigade to introduce themselves to the VOLTHA community. I think they're more visible on the CIBA community, but I think on the VOLTHA level, probably not as visible. $10 a.m. now. That's why I.
From a SI, where do you plan on getting your code? And how do you validate a certain level of integration? We're kind of at that point where you just go grab, what the boundaries of the grab, plug in. You guys have apply to what NetSia does, just cobble it together. But part of it, aligning with the last program. No, I agree with that. Kind of somewhat of a service by itself. You pick a bundle of, pick that bundle, it references 2.1 or 2.3.
sharing of what you found from ultimately Deutsche Telekom's perspective or Turk Telekom, AT&T, that we could share some of those scalability QA as opposed to pushing that all down into the O&F community.
Oh, well, I think that's maybe another side meeting. All the operator. How do you want to have feedback to O&F and also your service provider specific life cycle management? How do we map that into the O&F life cycle management, right? So, any other things? Okay, again, I was trying to say I welcome Foundry attending this time, and then we have Alpha Network, those two gentlemen. Can I say that? And then Furukawa over there, the Marcello and then the Vikash. And then now Reply also is a new member here.
Well, thanks for the privilege to attend here. We are not yet a member here for the ONF, but I'm glad to. Just to address the point from Troy, and one thing when we took the partnership for Deutsche Telekom was to set up the CI/CD pipeline, grab all the code and actually move it, deploy it in production, make it very quick. One observation that we have is traditionally you have a stage process to move the software through acceptance tests, through all other readiness tests. Now the aim is to do that continuously pipeline. I cannot tell you how we do that technically, but certainly are in the process of setting this up parties as well. And one thing is here that comes from the ONF, but there are also other third-party components going in or other parts that we need to bring together. And I mean, from my side, certainly we can work with Deutsche Telekom. Also give you the insights how this process is going to work. I don't think we are ready yet to do that these days or next week or so, but certainly that's a concern. Of this continuous stream on how do we take the software, how do we do the version control,
Yeah. Good. Yeah, and I wasn't suggesting that we necessarily all had to align, but be aware that the more we could align, I think we could get a much better consistency across what's consumed out of O&F that becomes commercialized.
Yeah. So just on that thought, I think we all probably as operators, right? We should have one pod that is connected to the CI pipe from the VOLTHA project. So it means like the public open source pipeline, and then we do have the opportunity to run our tests, our verification on that, right? And then we can feedback the issues we found, bugs or whatever to the community, of course. One thing I was thinking for this QA topic was not just certification, but also if you, of course, want to, based on the workflows, right, that we've put together, want to look into the test plan and have just this item on our roadmap, because running these functionally, right, not just as part of the unit tests and automated through the software build, but then also on the systems that we have, let's say on a normalized way, would help us all to identify issues, right, in scale or in performance, and that might be the other point that we cannot address just through simulation. I mean, there might be some issues we encounter that we cannot find through the automated unit tests. And
well, that's what I want to make sure we try to, because I think you guys are leading the way in some of the ways. We're in some areas we may be leading from a commercialized side, some of specifically with how you've engaged Reply from where they fit in, because now we get into the commercial domain, and then how we continue in the spirit of what we've done in the open community, driving that into the CI/CD pipeline, if you will, and be consistent across. Versus my fear is you're going to get an SI that comes in and pulls a bundle out, they wrap it and harden it, and now it's and basically fork it, and then you lose the whole intent of what we were trying to achieve. So.
Any last comment?
I have a few more just to follow up.
Damn.
Don't get mad. So I did note a few action items that I think people are aware of their action items from the discussions earlier. For example, we have the one on, David, you agreed to work on, and Chip's going to help you if needed with the proposal for the first set of standard district format. Do we have an estimate for when you think that will be ready to have discussion with the group? Okay. Had to ask. Okay, so am I. Okay.
And again, right, so the Tel Lab Les has put in some of his experience, and then the slides on that one. So it's being released on the VOLTHA Discuss. I don't know whether on the CBA side or not, but potentially, again, I would like to, unfortunately, we don't have time for Les to do the presentation on that, but we will want to schedule some other meeting for him. And Julie, are you intend to share?
No.
Okay.
Just my little notes, so I try and remember what to follow up with folks on later and roughly when to ask again. And then, is Andy still in the room? Okay, so Zach, I think you and Andy were going to put together a proposal on event filtering, kind of a first stab at things. Do you have an? Yeah. Okay, so no ETA yet. Okay. Ah, good. Okay. Oh, yeah. So, yeah, good point. So, question for the group was brought up: do we want to bring in like the event filtering into a formal scope item for 2.1? I hear heads. I see heads nodding no. Yeah. Okay. Yes, that's true. Okay. So we'll follow up after we see the initial proposal. Probably it would land in a 2.2 or beyond, it sounds like. Okay.
Again, right, we right now, I think we're separating. I don't know whether you're talking about the research related. And yeah, so it depends on what will be coming up of that. Maybe right now we don't know exactly what we're going to generate. And once you have that proposal, then maybe something.
Okay. Okay. And Sean, I think I won't. We have a number of folks who'll be busy next week or so with ONS and other things. So we'll try and schedule some of these items for future calls, cover what we can on VOLTHA Discuss with the initial proposals as well, and then do follow-up discussion on probably the Thursday call.
That's it? Okay. Okay, Bill, before Bill, I really want to, I think thanks to AdTran for providing this environment for us. It's a great location, different timing. Difficult timing, but the great location. So please tell Andy and Keith, we appreciate that. And I'm handing the microphone to Bill so he can wrap up the meeting for us.
Thanks, Sean. Yeah, I do appreciate AdTran. It's been a great facility, and I thank all of you for coming out. You've invested a lot of time and energy in the last few days, so much appreciated. I hope that it's been valuable for you too. And to the extent that you think that there's ways to do this better, let me know, let Sean know, give us feedback, and because we want to keep getting the community together, I don't know, maybe every six months or so. right? And so think about if you want to sponsor one of these events in one of your locations. We had a lot of, I guess, maybe they aren't silly recommendations. They sound like fun recommendations, but probably Hawaii is. Until we find, is there a telecom in Hawaii? Maybe we go to a tier 2 in Hawaii and get them to be a member. So yeah, so think about that. And okay, yeah. All right. So I also want to thank Sean and Julie again for all the work they did in getting this organized, and appreciate all the operators being here and bringing their needs and their requirements and being open with the community about how we can all move forward to help them get these solutions put into their networks. And Bjorn, welcome to the co-product owner role. And I don't think it was officially announced, but Julie will continue in the Scrum Master role. So thanks for offering to do that. Appreciate it. Let's see, other things. I'll pester you again with some of the logo stuff, unless someone wants to volunteer to take it off my hands. Just raise your hands. Yeah, I mean, trust me, this is not my forte. I like the pizza. It would be unique. So there'll be more coming out on that. Matt, if you want to volunteer your wife, just let me know. Okay. There's 2 T-shirts left. If anybody wants them, they're both XXL. So if you know somebody that might enjoy a T-shirt that size, take them. There's a whole bunch of chocolates left too. And I know I'm going to grab a few for my wife. Having been away, it'll help ease the transition. I know. And we have some stickers left over there. And I thought about it, Don, but I didn't do it. I thought about putting a sticker on your helmet on the back. Did you? Excellent. Send me a picture. All right. Any other comments? Questions? No? Okay. Well.
Yes, welcome all the new members. Hope you continue to show up on the phone calls and then join. Welcome on board. And I appreciate all the help, so I can focus a little bit more on stuff, right? So, any suggestion about when or where for the next meeting? I think quite a year. I think get a lot of stuff. Thanks, Phil.
Okay.
Safe travel home.
Yeah, definitely. Safe travels, and look forward to seeing you all in person again soon.
And I heard there's a beer fest at the Rocket